Hello, Mrs. F1.
Hello, Mr. F1.
How are you?
Good. Do you like my attire today?
I do. Enchanté Chalet.
Yes. If you're watching us on YouTube, I'm wearing Danny Rick merch today
That's right.
in honor of his F1 career.
His retirement, kind of.
His
Forced retirement.
I don't even know. But it was kind of a slow week this week when it came to some F1 news, but we're going to give you everything that we could possibly find. There are some interesting stories, but I would say it was kind of a calm week.
Yeah, as usual, the off season, right?
I feel like this off season has been crazy.
Well, there's bound to be some kind of quietness until the season starts.
Yeah, that's true. We are closing in, so maybe they're focusing more on like getting stuff together than like drama.
Yes.
Which is bad for Drive to Survive, but whatever. Here we are. Anyways, let's jump right into it. This is Formula One news, but more like media news. If you are into the world of Formula One podcasts and hosts and stuff like that, there is I guess you would call them a media outlet.
Yeah.
I don't know what you call them.
Credentials? I'm pretty sure they're at the races and stuff.
So WTF1. I'm sure you've seen them if you're on social media following Formula One. They are hosted by two hosts, Matt Gallagher and Tom, or Tommy as he's known.
I think they have other ones, but those are the two guys that started, or it seems like they started WTF1.
So WTF1 has been around for forever, but specifically Matt and Tommy have been working together on the show and their podcast for 6 years, and they have announced that they are leaving.
Mm-hmm.
This was kind of surprising to me because honestly, when I read this news, I was like, whoa, okay. Like, it's a very successful channel and news media outlet. They do things differently than the normal, like, Formula One news, which is nice. And they're leaving. And I was like, wait, can you do that? Because I feel like they are WTF1.
I feel like the reason, I'm speculating here, but I feel like the reason they're leaving is because they were offered bigger and better things. That would be my guess. And I haven't heard anything, because this was a few weeks ago that they announced this.
Yeah, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. But I haven't heard anything, whether or not they have jobs with F1 or something like that. But that would be my guess. They're probably able to get closer to the paddock outside of WTF1 than, staying where they were at that. Like you said, they are a news outlet, and I'm pretty sure they have credentials, because I've seen videos of them at races and stuff, and interviewing drivers and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They have these great, if you go on YouTube, if you're on the Formula One YouTube rabbit hole, which I always am, Matt did these awesome 3-minute videos with really cool, like, animated graphics, and like they just did really cool, like, bite-sized information and kind of like keeping you up to date on what's going on. And I always love those videos, and I hope they continue to do them, even though Matt isn't there anymore. But they're just really well done, and I kind of respected the production of it. And Matt himself is very good at what he does in terms of being a podcast host and creating that type of content. So obviously if they aren't sticking around in the podcast world, they'll be missed, because they're very good at what they do. But I suspect they're moving up to bigger and better things.
I mean, they did more than podcasts. They had YouTube shows.
Yeah.
I mean, their podcast was one of their big pieces of media. They did all kinds of stuff. But I think coming from a brand perspective, I found it really interesting because to me, like, Tommy and Matt were WTF1. And as a brand, they really built WTF1 around the two of them. So I am not sure if it will be able to survive without them. For two reasons. One, they were kind of this first fresh Formula One media that appealed to the younger generation and catered their media to what the younger generation wanted, which at the time, Tommy started this in his college dorm room, I think he said almost 10 years ago. And so he was catering to that audience where Sky Sports and F1 wasn't at the time. Right. He was way ahead of the game, and he really captured that audience. But I think the problem was, as they grew, Matt and Tommy really made the brand them And now that they're detaching themselves from it, they have brought 4 new hosts in, 2 men and 2 women, from all different walks of Formula One life, TikTok, and just other creators around Formula One. It will be interesting to see. They all have a following at the moment, like before they came to WTF1, so that is helpful. They're not just like these random people they picked out of nowhere.
Right.
But I don't know. We'll see. I'm really curious to see how that brand is going to survive without the 2 of them. But unfortunately, I have a feeling they're going to lose a lot of followers.
Yeah, it's tough when you're used to listening to a voice. I can relate to that. There's lots of, whether it's like a band, right? They change their lead singer and you don't want to listen to them anymore. I'm thinking of Blink-182 right off the top of my head. But I can see what you're saying in that they may lose viewers for people who were there, not necessarily for the brand WTF1, but for the people, Matt and Tommy. Right?
Yeah, or that's why they liked the brand so much, was because of them.
But I suspect they seem to be successful enough to where they can put a lot of thought into who these new hosts can be. I actually don't know anything about them, so I don't want to, kind of speculate on that. But I would assume that WTF1 is going to recruit some good replacements for Matt and Tommy. So hopefully they can kind of keep interest drumming.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, because it's a great platform. It's a great media outlet, and they do things so differently from traditional Formula One media. So we do wish them all the best. These
Absolutely.
4 new hosts. I am familiar with one of the women. She's a female TikToker. So we do wish them all the best. But on the other side, it is sad to see them go. I am interested to see where Matt and Tommy. I find it interesting they're leaving together. Which I hope they get into some other form of Formula One. Matt did say, like, they made a whole video about them leaving, and he did say, like, it's time. I've been doing this for 6 years. It's ready. I'm ready for something new. So maybe we'll see their faces on the grid at some point. I think they're both really talented. So
I agree.
We'll see what happens. Maybe there'll be an announcement coming soon. But there was some other big media news that came out this week. Well, I guess you could call it media news. Formula One put out the official schedule for the 2023 season. And the Chinese Grand Prix will not be replaced.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. They, we all know how Formula One likes money. So kind of confused as to why they didn't, pick a replacement, because their fans were throwing out, tracks to replace it with. But maybe the drivers said, like, hey, 24 races is absolutely insane. Let's keep it to 23. Now we have that big gap, right?
Yeah.
It's, 4 weeks?
Yeah, so now the Chinese Grand Prix is off the calendar. There will be a 4-week break in between the Australian Grand Prix and Baku. So I'm sure the drivers are happy to hear about that.
I would think so.
With this extended season going on. I also think a reason they didn't replace it is it's a little too late in the game. Like, they would need to find somebody that has a track that's pretty much already capable of hosting a race at this point in time, which is a little difficult. Or you could do a doubleheader like they did during COVID.
Right.
Which I think at this point the drivers would start to complain, like, why? At this point, why are we doing this? Just take the race off the calendar.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see. I know there were talks about oh my God, we talked about it in a prior episode. Now I'm forgetting. There were Portugal.
Portugal, of course. Portimao, was being thrown around. Turkey was being thrown around.
Which I think would all be...
Those tracks, they're ready to go. They are ready to host an F1 race. To me, it was more... I'm guessing it was more input from the drivers saying, please don't replace this, because it's already crazy enough. And Max has said multiple times, somebody asked Max about his win. He just passed whoever on the all-time wins list, and he was like, don't compare me to those people. We have like 13 more races a year than they do. That's not a fair comparison. Like, our schedule is crazy, because back then they used to race in Formula One and 3 other series. Like, nowadays, if you're an F1 driver, you don't race in anything else. So I think it's just already a lot to ask of these drivers to compete in 24 races. So as much as the fans hate to see it, because we'd all love to see another race, it is what it is, and maybe this is the best for the teams and the drivers.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is best to just take one off the list. Also, a lot of less stress on Formula One. There are a lot of there's a lot of things. Yes, obviously the first thing is you need a track that you can race on. That's like the number one thing you need to figure out. But also there's a lot of other logistics. Can the surrounding area take on 200, 300,000 people coming into to or around the surrounding areas of that track, and the infrastructure of that city handle that capacity? And also, like, can we fly there? Can we get everything from point A to point B in time? So
not to mention the politics,
Yeah, absolutely.
The current world politics that's going on obviously changes things, i.e. Russia.
Right. Yeah, so it's a lot of stuff going on, so I think it is good overall. And I mean, as a fan, I'm kind of like, oh man, 4 weeks, that's like a summer break.
Yeah.
In the middle. But I think it's definitely, maybe they'll think in the future doing something similar.
Well, it'll give you more content for drivers' daily lives, because they'll probably all go skiing or on the beach somewhere or whatever.
Go back into the Arctic on their 4-week break.
Yeah, with the penguins.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting, but I also wonder, like, could this be an interesting format moving forward? If we're going to add more races like this, we need more than one long break in the season. So could they, if we go back to 24 races next year, could we see them kind of putting in a mini summer break somewhere else in the season to help relieve a lot of this travel fatigue?
I think they need 2 breaks, because there already is a middle of the year, a summer break, right, and then obviously the off-season break that we're in right now. But I think it's demanding enough to where there probably should be 2 breaks, because it's just crazy. The schedule's crazy. The logistics is crazy, and F1 did a great video on just how that stuff works, like loading everything up on tankers and moving them across the world. Like that is very, not to mention the environmental aspect of it, which I know Formula One's kind of trying to
work on.
Maybe that would also affected their decision to not add another race, because if they were at, what was the race before China? Australia. So say they added Portugal, so they would have had to take all those tankers from Australia to Portugal, and then from Portugal all the way to Azerbaijan. Right. That's craziness. Yeah, that's a huge logistical nightmare. And yes, there would probably be 2 weeks in between each race, but with the environmental issues and that kind of thing, I can understand why F1 figured it's probably not a good idea to fill this gap.
Maybe. I would love to think that Formula One is thinking about their environmental impact
They claim they are.
Yeah, they claim they are, but when you have, money versus a couple of trees you might hurt, they're going to pick money. Yeah. Anyways, so Chinese GP, RIP forever, and nothing is replacing it.
I don't know about forever.
Well, we'll see. Forever. Maybe next year it'll be back on the calendar, and Guan Yu Zhou will finally get his home race.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier that if you're a Formula One driver, you usually don't drive in any other series professionally. Well, our friend Kevin Magnussen was supposed to appear in the Daytona or the Rolex 24-hour race. He was going to be racing with his dad. He has pulled out of that race because his doctor found a cyst in his hand.
Oh, no.
That needed to be surgically removed. I am sure his Formula One career obviously played a role in deciding not to do this, because it was like, put off the surgery, have it affect my F1 season, or don't put off the surgery and just don't race with my dad.
Yep.
But that's kind of concerning, a cyst in the hand.
I would think that as long as he got the surgery not that long ago, he'll be fine for the start of the season. So I can't imagine that it'll affect him too much.
I mean, the hand, a cyst, for all of you that don't know, Matt has a bit of a medical background. So it's like our two worlds are colliding here. Like a cyst on the hand, like where is that? Could that be developed from driving? Like, I don't understand.
It could come from a bunch of different things, but obviously, the hands are really important. You want to maintain the dexterity that the hand has, but look at Romain Grosjean. His hand almost burned off his body, and he's still driving.
I was just going to say, he's had to put in a lot of work, and still is, to get the movement back in his hand.
But he's still going, and he's racing in one of the best racing series in the world. So, that to me was a much more questionable outcome on whether or not he could drive than removing a cyst in the hand. That'll be cake for for a hand surgeon, a hand weenie,
Yeah.
as they call them in the...
Surgeons, we know this from other surgeons, that surgeons that work on just hands are called, in the medical world, hand weenies.
Hand weenies.
They're like hand nerds.
That's right.
Yeah.
All they do is hands
They
all
just
day.
love
Yep.
every bone in the hand.
Yep, that's all they care about.
So sad to see that. I was actually kind of looking forward
Yeah, it
to
would have been
watching
nice
that.
to have him race in
Yeah,
that
and
series, but
Also super cool that he races next to his dad. Like
that would be, yeah.
Yeah, that's really amazing. But he won't be racing in that series. So if you're an American and you bought tickets to that hoping to meet Kevin Magnussen,
Bummer.
yeah, sorry, it won't be happening.
That's a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame. There's another driver on the grid right now that is having some woes, some hard times, and that is Nyck de Vries.
Mm-hmm.
It came out this week that Nyck de Vries is in some legal issues with a former sponsor of his.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me break this down for the people, because I had to read a couple of articles just to make sure I got this right, because I'm no lawyer. I'm no attorney. I don't know the law minus the rules of the road, and I don't even follow those. Yeah.
You make a bunch of Always Sunny jokes
exactly. Yeah. Okay, so Nyck de Vries signed a contract with a sponsor in 2018 for a loan for 250,000 euros.
And let's be clear, that this was to fund his Formula 2 season.
Yes, this was to help fund his Formula 2 season in 2018. Okay. The deal with this said loan sponsorship, he would pay 3% interest on the loan yearly and would owe 50% of his salary if he made it into F1 by the year 2022. So if Nyck de Vries popped from F2 to F1, he got that F1 seat, he was going to have to pay this guy 50% of his salary. Now, as we all know, Nyck de Vries was not signed to a team in 2022 as a full-time F1 driver, correct?
But he did drive an F1 race in 2022.
Yes, he did drive, but he did not become a official Formula One driver for any said team full-time. And the deal on this loan was, if he didn't make it into Formula One by end of 2022, he would not have to pay back the loan at all. So this is where things get sticky. And this is where you need to make sure you have good lawyers when you're writing up contracts.
Exactly.
Because this is a perfect example. Apparently the guy or the company that loaned him this money is a big real estate mogul in the Netherlands. He is claiming that because Nyck drove for Williams for that one race where Alex Albon, was in the hospital, he's saying that qualifies as becoming a Formula One driver.
Right.
Nyck and his team are arguing, no, it doesn't. And also the real estate mogul's now saying, well, you were also a reserve driver, so doesn't that count? To me, this just screams this guy is trying to just money grabbing from Nyck de Vries.
Well, if you look at it from his point of view, if you give out a loan, you probably want it to be paid back, understandably so.
Yeah, but Nyck de Vries,
again, it all comes down to the details of the contract. And obviously we don't have the contract in front of our eyes, but if the contract stated, he needed to be a full-time F1 driver by the end of 2022, he wasn't.
No.
It's pretty clear he wasn't.
Right.
So in my eyes, he shouldn't have to pay this guy back.
Well, apparently he has said that this is ridiculous and that he has actually already paid back 190,000 euros of the loan today. So he's trying to defend himself, saying it's not like I haven't paid this guy anything.
Right. It's not like I owe this guy all the money.
Right. And we were talking about this last night, and I see both sides of the story. But if I was Nyck de Vries' legal team in 2018, looking at this contract saying 50% of your F1 salary, and again, I don't know what goes on in the F1 world when it comes to deals, but 50% seems like a lot of money to ask for somebody when you're only loaning them $250,000.
And especially knowing that basically all European countries already tax your income well over 50%.
Right.
So, that's just a lot of money to have to fork over. And I also don't is it 50% of his salary for his entire F1 career?
Right.
Because that could be a ton of money that he's losing. Or is it only 50% of his first contract or 50% of his first year? We don't have any of these details because those things would change the the meaning of this drastically, right? Like if his deal was he owed this real estate mogul 50% of all earnings in his F1 career, I mean, that's the world's worst contract.
Yeah.
Right? That is the world's worst agreement I've ever heard.
Right.
I hope that's not the case because, like I said, he's not getting paid $40 million like Lewis, right?
No.
My guess is he's making €500,000 or whatever.
He might be making... I'll have to look, and I don't know if this is public knowledge yet, but I think he might be making more than like somebody in their rookie season just because of all of his success and experience. Yeah. It's not like he came just from F2 and.
But either way, it's not a lot of money.
No, it's still not a lot.
And to the average, I don't want let's.
In the F1 world, it's not a lot of money.
Right? Yeah, I would be happy to get paid whatever he's getting paid. But yes, you're right. In the F1 world, it's not a lot of money. And again, if he's getting taxed 50 to 60%, and he owes half of his income to this real estate mogul, I mean, now that's not that much money.
And it's just interesting to me because he's already, think about this, he's already paid back $190,000 of this loan. Mm-hmm. And then he's having to, which he's probably already been paying that 3% interest on year over year.
Yeah, but
and then he's going to have to put in half of his salary. I'm a little confused as to why Nyck took this deal in the first place. Did he really think he wasn't going to make it into Formula One by that point?
And you and I talked about this last night, about how did he have other options to fund his Formula 2 career?
Yeah, or was he advised not to take this deal? But like we said, if it was the only deal on the table and he needed it to continue in Formula 2, maybe he was just like, I'll just bite the bullet and do this.
I have to do it.
Yeah, so it's just a little weird to me, honestly. And the guy was only, this is, again, like, we're talking money in F1 terms. He's only loaning him $250,000. In the grand scheme of Formula One, that's a drop in the bucket. So you're only loaning him, like, pennies in the F1 world, and then you're asking for half of his Formula One salary. That to me is a little crazy.
It's a little predatory, unfortunately. And maybe this guy knew that Nyck was struggling to receive funding and kind of, use that to his advantage to be able to say, okay, it's either you don't race in Formula 2 or you sign this pretty favorable contract in my view.
Yeah.
To keep your career going. And, it's just a shame. What should happen is, like, Lewis should just be like, yeah, I'll just give you $1 million of my salary this year and just shut this guy up and be like, go ahead, Nyck, drive. But
I mean, he's good friends with Lewis and Max, apparently. I don't know. To me, it just seems shady as all get out, this deal. I feel bad for Nyck de Vries because obviously the contract wasn't vetted very well by his team and wasn't put together very well by this mogul's team. Yeah. Or maybe it was done that way on purpose so he could come back and do this type of crap to him later on. It's just sad to see, like, drivers, it's tough to keep their careers going, especially the higher up you get. And to see, like, things like this happen to some of these drivers, at least in this case, when I look at, like, all these articles and read them, I'm like, yeah, this guy is just trying to ring Nyck for all he's worth, and being sneaky about it. So it is sad to see. We obviously don't know how this deal came about, why it wasn't vetted, but, well, it's going to court in the next couple of weeks or so. So I hope Nyck wins. Nyck, Team de Vries.
To end this, this is just a symptom of a bigger problem. The bigger problem is that it's astronomically expensive to race, to do serious racing in Europe.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if it weren't like this, then Nyck wouldn't have to sign this predatory contract, and we wouldn't be talking about this, and Abby Pulling wouldn't be begging for money.
I just was going to talk about that.
This is something that we need to fix, and W Series was trying to make a serious effort to fix this.
Absolutely.
By saying, look, we understand that this is an expensive sport, and there's no way of getting around that. Racing is an expensive sport. Especially the higher up you go, the more technology, the cars need to be faster. It's obviously going to be expensive, but we have to find some sort of way to subsidize so that these people don't have to fork over millions and millions of dollars just to race in these
and
series.
Don't have to sacrifice their future salaries
Yes.
that may not ever come to fruition.
Right.
Like,
right. And sign these awful predatory contracts. Like, let's say that Nyck never made Formula One, and he didn't get a reserve seat, and he had to find a job outside of Formula One. He still has to pay this loan back at 3% interest per year.
Well, no, it says if he didn't make it to Formula One by end of 2022, he would not have to pay back the loan.
Okay, but that's just very confusing to me because
he was paying on the loan. I think it meant he wouldn't have to pay on the remaining amount left. So he was continuing to pay, while he was still in racing. But if he didn't make it,
and then I guess the loan terms would just end at the end of 2022 or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's this specific case, right? I mean, maybe there are drivers out there who signed on to loans to try and continue their racing career, and when they don't make it to Formula One, their racing career ends. They have to go work a real job and pay back this loan.
What job are you gonna get to
exactly
make that?
Now you're it's almost like they're taking on student loans, like for Americans who know how painful that is. You hate to see that, and I just hope there's some way we can devise like what W Series was doing, where there's someone who can subsidize a way to make talented drivers be able to stay racing without having to find funding everywhere. If Lewis didn't have McLaren backing him when he was 13, he wouldn't be in Formula One right now.
Yeah.
So he didn't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine how many great drivers have just not been able to afford it and have backed out, and now we don't have the pleasure of watching, these talented drivers that just couldn't afford the payments to just keep going on. That to me is something that I hope in the next coming years Formula One and FIA can address.
Yeah, and you mentioned Abby Pulling. This broke my heart this week. I mean, obviously, every young driver, everybody coming up in any serious motorsports, finding funding is part of it. Yeah. Male, female, it doesn't matter. But when I think the odds are stacked just a little bit more against you when you're a woman, and this might be controversial, and we may agree to disagree on this, but there's already a lot of stigmas behind female talent. There hasn't been a ton of any women really to be able to display their talents in some of these higher racing. But Abby Pulling posted on her Instagram this week that basically she needs sponsors. Mm-hmm. It was the saddest post. And I mean, kudos to her for being brave and posting that. Yeah. Because honestly, if I was in her shoes, I would be like, I hate that I have to do this right now. Mm-hmm. And it's a tad, I don't want to say embarrassing, because I commend her for doing it. Yeah. But if I was in her shoes, I'd be like, this is freaking embarrassing.
Yeah, well, you feel like you're
groveling,
exactly,
begging for people to sponsor you.
Exactly.
And I think the reason with her, in her case, where it makes me so angry, the reason it makes me so angry is because she is talented. She is currently, F1 just put out a top 20 drivers to watch list. She is on it. Yeah. She is a young talent. She's 19 years old. She has 2 karting championships under her belt, had a very decent season in W Series last year. There's no reason sponsors shouldn't be coming to her, or she should be having trouble convincing people that she is worth the sponsorship. Mm-hmm. And I made a post on TikTok about it, and of course it lit all the male F1 supporter gatekeepers on fire. But you know what? I don't care. I think she's a driver that deserves it, regardless of her sex at all. I think she has proven herself in a lot of different ways for only being 19. Yeah. There are drivers out there that are men that are older than her with a less how do I say this? Their record isn't as good as hers, and they are not having as much trouble finding sponsors.
And unfortunately, people like Roy Nissany, who've been in F2 for 7 years. Mm-hmm. The dude's as old as I am, racing 19-year-olds in F2. Dude, give it up. First off, I'm sorry. Just give it up. You're not getting into F1. And B, he's only there because he's got a family that's loaded,
right? Because he has
and
money.
Continue to fund.
It just like you said, it makes me sad. Abby Pulling is obviously a talent, and if she doesn't get sponsorship and people don't believe in her, we will never find out if she could make it to the top of it.
And the shame of it is that people like Roy Nissany, and I hate to throw him under the bus. He's not a bad driver, but he's not good enough. He's not good enough to make Formula One. He just isn't. he can continue to stay there because of money, and more talented, less well-funded drivers can't. And that needs to switch. I'm sorry. We need to figure out a way, and I know we live in a capitalistic world where, money talks, and that has its pros and cons, but we have to live in a meritocratic world where if you're very good, you're in.
Yeah.
You can't just be there because of the money. You can't do that.
And people in my TikTok comments are like, she's in W Series. They pay for everything anyways. W Series pays for everything related to the car. Doesn't pay for all the expenses you incur traveling to a lot of these places. Like, just think about when you go on a vacation, all the little things that come up that you have to pay for that you forgot. Like, she still needs backing to support a lot of her other things she's doing.
Yep.
And I mean, it's just rough. It's sad to see. It's sad to see the situation with Nyck de Vries. It's sad to see a talent like Abby Poling having trouble with all of her success and her young age, trying to get sponsors. And I mean, we talked about this before. There are girls who are racing right now that have gotten significant backing from teams and brands. Jamie Chadwick, for example, got sponsored by Rolex this year, and she's backed by Williams. It's a bummer. Like, it just is. And I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah, it's a tough problem to solve.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can see more series like W Series that are able to kind of have a pot of money, subsidize talented drivers regardless of how wealthy you are, and bring the best drivers to the top.
Yeah. Nick, we're on your team. Abby, I'm trying to help you out, Abby girl. I really am.
If we had money, Abby, I'd support you. But.
Yeah. And so, speaking of female drivers, we mentioned her just a little bit ago. Jamie Chadwick announced, obviously she's not driving a W Series this coming year. She has moved to Indy Light. But she will be continuing with the Williams Driver Academy. A little...
I was confused by that.
Yeah.
I was surprised that Williams would continue to sponsor her after she jumped across the pond. Didn't really think that was very common, but...
I don't think so, yeah.
I'm hoping for her success. She made it sound like she made this jump because she felt that she could be near the top of the series. And I would really like to see that. I still think she should have gotten a seat in Formula 3. But maybe this is the stepping stone. If she can prove herself in Indy Lights, maybe she'll be able to jump to Formula 3.
Yeah, part of me was like, what's Williams' long game here with her? What's going on? Do they want to bring her on in, F2, F1 maybe in the future? Or is this just like a PR thing for them?
Right.
We're like, look at us. We sponsor a female driver. We're awesome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Williams is now owned by an American company, Doralton Capital.
This is true.
And she moved to an American racing series, so maybe that's why they felt...
There's some opportunity there for them.
And they could keep an eye on her. The higher-ups at Doralton could make sure, that they can be there for her because she's, on the same island.
Yeah, and they'll be backing her and supporting her with money as well. This is another way you can get sponsorship as a driver, is being part of an academy.
Yep.
Like Williams has one, Ferrari Drivers Academy.
They all have one,
yeah. This is a way that you can get big buku bucks behind you without having like a big sponsorship deal. So, I mean, I'm happy to see she's keeping her foot in that world. A little confused as to what the long game is on that.
Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, I don't
for Jamie, it's just to focus on the here and now. Just be successful in Indy Lights, prove everybody wrong.
Yeah.
And hopefully she can jump back to Europe and race in some of those higher series.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I'm wishing her all the best. We'll have to watch. When does Indy Lights start? Soon, right? IndyCar starts soon.
You know what? I actually don't know, and I should know that, but
yeah,
I would think it starts fairly soon.
We encourage everybody to watch her, at least watch the highlights and like cheer for her because.
And I'm not sure if Indy Lights is televised, is easily available in American television because they changed the series now. It's Indy NXT.
Right.
But it's last year's Indy Lights. And, I'm not sure if it is readily available to watch on television, unlike IndyCar, which, is aired. Hopefully, if any fans out there listening know where we can watch Indy NXT, that would be a big help for
Yeah,
us.
let us know. There really wasn't any other big news stories.
Nope.
The Formula 2 grid's filling out.
I believe there's like only 4 seats left.
Yeah,
it's
so
looking good.
we'll have to report more thoroughly on that once that grid is completely there. But let's migrate into the driver's room.
Oh, gosh.
I'm trying out a bunch of different names every episode for this segment.
I like that, driver's room.
Driver's
That's a good
room?
one.
Yeah, I thought so too. It sticks. Maybe we'll have to make like a little jingle.
The cool down room.
The cool down room?
No, I don't like cool down.
Oh my God. We're still working out the working title. Anyways, this is the part of the show where we deep dive into the drivers' lives. We're not deep diving. It's just what I've seen them been doing this week. An interesting 2 sports met, Formula 1 and the NBA kind of teamed up this week. Hey, PR people at the NBA, genius. They see that Formula 1 is growing, it's bringing attention. So when they did their big game in Paris this week, they invited Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon,
And of course,
my boy Charles Leclerc. They were all there at the game. They participated in some activities before the game with some NBA players. They sat courtside.
Yep.
It looked like a good old time.
Yeah.
Charles and Pierre seemed to be just like buddying it up as always. Something I want to point out, and it caused a lot of controversy on TikTok when I posted this.
Gosh.
Does Charles Leclerc not get along with Esteban? Because I just happened to notice. This is definitely putting on my tinfoil hat here, people. But Charles Leclerc posted all these pictures of being at the NBA game. He didn't show Esteban in any of them. And then a couple days later, he posted this cool video montage about being there. Esteban, not in any of the clips. Even he posted a picture of him and Pierre sitting courtside. Esteban cropped out.
Interesting.
It was kind of weird. It was like I wouldn't really think anything of it, but when everything he posted from the event just happened to not have Esteban in it, it was a little suspicious.
Maybe they just talked about it and said, let's do this as a joke. Make everyone think that we hate each other.
I don't know. The reason I bring this up is because of the weird postings, but also we know that Esteban isn't super well liked.
Yes.
I again, he's gotten into fights with people on multiple occasions. I think Pierre is tolerating him because I don't know. Every time they post content with each other, it just seems forced.
They're all of French descent, right? I know Charles is Monegasque, but let's be real.
I mean,
Monaco is France, basically. They're, with a tax haven attached to it. But I know that Esteban and Drive to Survive hammered this was he wasn't like everyone else. He didn't come from a lot of money. He didn't. He kind of worked his way up, similar to how Lewis worked his way up, had to get sponsorships, that kind of thing, whereas Charles and Pierre are of money, and that was never really much of an issue to fund their career. And, it seems to have put a chip on Esteban's shoulders, which it would for any human being, but maybe that makes him not very likable.
Yeah, and I don't know. It just also when they were sitting courtside, the seating arrangement was Pierre, Charles, Esteban. Charles was splitting the two of them. It was kind of weird.
That's strange that Charles was sitting right next to Esteban and he wasn't in any pictures.
Right, and part of me was was Pierre and Esteban invited to this event by the NBA through Alpine? And Pierre was like, Charles, come with me. I really don't want to spend all day with Esteban.
No. I'm sure Charles was the first one they called because let's be real, he's the most popular of the three.
Yeah, Pierre's pretty popular too.
Yeah,
I have to say that he's got. So, anyways, go on Charles' Instagram, check it out. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's like Esteban wasn't even there. But yeah, so that was interesting, and kudos to the NBA for making all of our dreams come true there. We also got. Well, let me rephrase this. There are certain teams that are known to really post thirst traps on their Instagrams. Mercedes is one of them. Okay.
I already know where this is going.
But a new team has jumped on this bandwagon with one of their new recruits. Williams is really pumping out that Logan Sargent content.
Yep.
And it's borderline thirst trap.
Oh, yeah.
It's borderline thirst trap. They posted a whole video montage of him working out, and I was like, Williams who? Who is this? Who are you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to take advantage of a good-looking dude, young kid who, is exercising, lifting weights. It's like those Rocky montages back in the 80s. Everybody loved them.
I was like, Alex, Logan's going to steal your thunder, so you need to, like, really make friends with the marketing crew.
I'm suspecting that when the season starts and they're driving, Alex will steal that thunder right back. I love you, Logan, but Alex is a really good driver.
Yeah. I just thought it was interesting because I've really never seen Williams post that type of content with Alex or Nick.
Or George, for that matter. And George is his own thirst trap,
This is like the perfect segue because the king of thirst traps on Instagram, George Russell, posted a video this week of him working out. When I saw this, I was like, oh, typical George. Yep. And I almost scrolled past it. And then it like cuts to Toto Wolff working out with George as well. And I was like, oh my God.
Not to mention Toto's curling like 8 billion pounds too. Let's be real. Like Toto has become Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Toto is...
He sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a tank. He's erasing Arnold Schwarzenegger.
He is the best looking team principal on the grid. hands down. There is no one
and he's huge.
Close. Yeah. How the man has time to work out after being CEO and
right.
team
owning
principal,
whatever
father.
percent of
Yeah. I don't understand how this man does it. He literally is the Superman.
I'm just gonna start calling him Toto Schwarzenegger.
Toto Schwarzenegger.
Toto Schwarzenegger. That's his new name.
But it was great. It was everything every woman has ever wanted. Toto doesn't give us a lot of that content on his own. Mm-hmm. And Mercedes usually, it was his birthday too this week ago, and
happy belated, Toto.
They were posting a bit of Toto thirst traps.
There you go.
It's funny to see teams know, like, they know their drivers are good looking and they're like, let's milk this for all it is.
Why wouldn't you?
It's great. Last but not least, a friendship that I did not see coming is blossoming before our very eyes, and I love to see it. Okay. Jen Ricciardo's physio, I guess is what they call them. Basically trainer.
Yep.
Obviously Daniel's not racing anymore, so he doesn't need a trainer. So Yuki Tsunoda has picked up Daniel Ricciardo's physio. His name is Michael. Mm-hmm. You know who he is. He's everywhere. Mm-hmm. Adorable Australian man. And him and Yuki seem to be getting along really, really well. They posted a cute Instagram post. Yuki is on Michael's shoulders. It's really adorable. And it also makes me really happy because I know Yuki has had a really bumpy road when it comes to, like, who surrounds him as a team.
Yeah.
Especially this year, we saw freaking Helmut Marko saying how Yuki has anger issues, and they've hired a psychiatrist for him. We've heard Yuki say he doesn't like the psychiatrist. So it just seems like he's been really having a hard time finding people that are just able to be in his corner and support him. And I think Michael is very quickly becoming that.
That's good, because this is a make or break year for Yuki. Let's be real.
Yeah.
He's had a few years experience in F1 now. He's struggled. He's inconsistent. Let's hope this is kind of the beginning of him turning the page and becoming a more consistent driver.
Yeah, and hopefully Michael can help him. Like, Yuki has said this too. Like, it's no surprise. He has anger issues. We've all heard him fly off the handle on the radio. Maybe a little bit more anger issues than some other drivers. And hopefully Michael will be able to just help him with that as well. I feel like Michael was really good for Danny Rick when it came to his, like, mindset mentally. So hopefully he'll be able to do the same for Yuki and help him in other ways other than training. So I just love to see it because, Yuki lost Pierre, his bestie. Now it seems that Michael's kind of filling that gap. And it's just really cute to see. Who doesn't love Yuki Tsunoda?
Yeah, he's the best. I was like, but he was the most similar driver to me or something like that. I took that test.
Oh.
Right? Remember?
I don't know who you got on that.
I know it was Yuki.
Oh.
But what was it called again? Like
I don't know.
It was on F1. It was like,
Matt
do this test and you'll find out which driver you are. And
Matt and I both took the what F1 driver are you test. No surprise here, I got Charles Leclerc. And Matt got Yuki, which was honestly surprising, but now that I'm thinking about it, you get so frustrated so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that is probably
Your
a Yuki.
temper, yeah. You don't fly off the handle like Yuki Tsunoda does,
No.
but you get angry real quick when like something isn't going your way.
That is very true.
Yeah, so maybe that's why you are Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, we're the same height too.
Yeah, you are short. Sorry. But that's all we got for you this week. Sorry it was a little light on the interesting news, but needless to say, we're glad you joined us. We have a really exciting guest coming on the show. I will give you a hint. Red flags. So that's the hint.
Yes.
We have a really exciting guests, and I cannot wait to release the episode and give it to the people because it's going to be so much fun and so amazing. So make sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you listen to us on so you don't miss a single episode. As always, make sure to give us a 5-star rating. We much appreciate it.
Yeah.
And you can find us on YouTube and social media at Mr. and Mrs. F1 Pod. And until next week, we will see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.